Hello, hello, hello! My name is Bobby, and we are going to go through how to create a scratch game that teaches people how to bake pumpkin seeds. As you can see, I have two tabs open because I have the full game that I have made already coded, ready to go, ready to be played. And, excuse me, I have a second one, make your own. So it has all of the sprites, or at least most of them. It has the costumes and whatnot. It has all of the backdrops that you will need that I have already made. They are ready for you to go ahead and start coding. So if you would like to code along with me during this demonstration, totally fine. Or if you want to go through and do it by yourself, also totally fine. So first things first, let's go ahead and play through the game. Goodness. So you always want to press the green flag. The green flag is important. You'll use it to reset all your sprites, reset your variables, and you'll use it to test your game a lot. So first thing we have to do, we have to find the pumpkin. So when we click on our pumpkin, it floats up into the air. Now we have to cut our pumpkin open. As you can see, we have a scoop and a little knife. So if we click on the scoop, nothing happens. Can't do anything with those. So we'll go ahead and click on the knife, and we'll carve our pumpkin open. So can't go cutting the pumpkin again, but we can go ahead and scoop out our seeds. And now we can't use these anymore. So let's go ahead and head off to the kitchen. So now we need to drag the seeds onto the pumpkin tray and lay them in a flat layer. So we'll take our pumpkin seeds and we'll drag them over here. So we have a fun drag and drop. Now we will use some salt and oil to season our pumpkin seeds. And shake that salt. And now we're going to pop them in the oven. We'll wait a moment. Have our pumpkin seeds bake. And now we'll pull them out and let them cool. And now we have some delicious pumpkin seeds to make. So let's see how we code this game. First, let's go and restart the game, and let's take a look at everything. We've got all of our sprites over here. If we click on our backdrops, we can see the code for our backdrops, and we can see all of our backdrops on the side. So just an FYI, we have to code each of our sprites individually. You can see that whenever we click on them. You can see all the individual coding. And then on the left side, we have all of our coding blocks from motion, looks, and then we can click through these to quickly get through everything we will be needing to pull out. Important first thing is our little green flag. So at the start of the game, we always want to reset the game with a little green flag. So if this code wasn't here, that we switch back to this backdrop, then, and also reset our variables. I'm going to go ahead and turn those on so we can see those throughout the game. Then we would be stuck on whatever backdrop we were previously on. So if, say, we were on the kitchen backdrop, we would be here and have these sprites up here rather than on the farm where they should be. Each sprite in its code also has something to reset it. So for this first scene, when the sprite is clicked, we show our pumpkin, we show our hay, but our knife is hidden, our pumpkin seed is hidden. I'll go ahead and move this around so it'll be easier to look at later. All of these things that don't need to be on this first screen are hidden. So now, if we look at our pumpkin, we have it set to not draggable. We have it to costume 1, and I have the size set because we only have one pumpkin here. So when we go to the next area, so let's go ahead and do that. I set my size to 150 because I want it to be closer. So I want it to like show you that it's closer. But if we don't reset the size back to its normal 100 whenever we restart, then it's going to be big again. So I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like if we don't reset the size. So it's bigger. We'll go ahead and just pull that out for a second. And now we've got a really big pumpkin right there. So we always want to reset our sprite to its base whenever the green flag is clicked. We want to reset the location, and we want to set whether it's going to be shown or hidden. So like, whoop, see how we have the knife and our scoop there. If we pull out this hide, I'll do it for both of them, and then we restart, they're both still there, and we don't want that. So we'll go ahead and put those back on there, start again, and they're gone. So first things first, looking at our pumpkin, we have all this code over here. Nothing's currently going on. We know that because there's no code glowing and the red stop sign isn't glowing. The red stop sign just stops the code, and we'll have some better examples of that here in a little bit. So when this sprite is clicked, the first thing it's going to check is if the variable is 0. So if it is, we will glide upwards. That's that little animation. We'll wait for a moment, and then we're going to broadcast go inside. When we broadcast that, over here we have when it receives go inside, then it goes to that new location and it sets its size to 150. We also have the if then statement here because, as you can see, the variable goes up by 1. If we don't have that, then when you click on this pumpkin again, as you can see, this lights up. When you click on the pumpkin again, if we didn't have that if then checking the variable, then it would float off over here. And I will show you what that looks like. So we'll just not change the variable. Start over. And now since the variable didn't go up any, it'll just float off over there. So using this variable kind of keeps it from just floating off when being clicked again. Also, having the variable change inside of this if then keeps it from keeps the variable from going up just because it's been clicked. So if, say, we had this outside, even though it's not going to run this code, it will still change our variable by 1, and that's no good. We don't want that to happen. So I also have here, along with the pumpkin sprite, the hay as a sprite by itself. These two are not sprites, they're both part of the backdrops, as you can see here, but then we have this missing hay here, and that is this one. And I have it as its own individual sprite, so I can place it in front of the pumpkin. As you can see, when we click this, it goes to the front layer, meaning that it will always be in front of the pumpkin. But it's only there just to kind of be there to cover it a little bit, to try and add some extra dimension. Looking at some other code, because this broadcasts go inside, we also have our scoop and our knife show up, and also our background changes. So in order to keep things together, I have it set all of the background changes are in the coding of the background. We also have it so that the variable is set to 0 every time we restart the game. So that pops back down to 0. If you don't have this here, then it stays on 1 or whatever. So as you can see, our variable is 1. It's still 1. And now we can't click the pumpkin and move on with the game. So put that back, get that back over here. When we broadcast and then receive go inside, we go into the witch house. So we have some talking here, and that is this little say button. So when I receive go inside, we show, so our knife is now showing, and then we say use me to cut open the pumpkin. So that'll be whenever we click on the knife. Right now the sprite is waiting to be clicked, so if my variable equals 1, then we'll also change the variable by 1. Watch whenever we change the variable by 1, this will go up to 2. My variable will equal 2, so it will also remove the talking bubble. If we did not have this, then the talking bubble would just follow the knife and just hang out. So, as we saw, whenever we clicked the sprite, we changed our variable, we're now at 2, and then we flashed over to the pumpkin and we broadcasted Saw while gliding. Now Saw switches our costume back and forth. So if we look at our costumes, we can see that they're the same thing, but they're just off a little bit. So instead of trying to code something going up and down and up and down and up and down over and over again, we can copy, because I don't believe I gave you all a second carving knife. Yes, so you'll have to do this yourself if you want the carving animation. The easiest way to do that is by dragging a box and highlighting it with this tool. We go to our keyboard and we press Control C to copy. We go down to our little sprite dude and we press Paint. So this isn't, if you just click on this, it takes you to this big menu of sprites. And so if we go to Paint, it just makes a new empty canvas. And we can press Control V to paste our knife. It'll paste it in the same spot, but now we can move it slightly off. And as you can see, whenever we move it, it also moves it on our screen over here. So we can move it a little bit, and then we can switch between these costumes to give an animation like it's moving back and forth. So after it snaps over here, then it starts going through that animation of going back and forth by switching between the costumes while also gliding across the pumpkin. And then after it does that, it snaps over back to the table. So, and then it broadcasts cut. So if we look back at our pumpkin again, when I receive cut, we switch to costume 2, which is the pumpkin missing a little bit off of the top. I had originally planned a carving game, so that's why we have some of these extra costumes up here, but we're not going to use them for this game. But as you can see, our next costume is just our pumpkin without a top on it. So now we've switched our costume. We have also changed our variable by 1, and because of that, we can no longer click on the knife. Also, after broadcasting cut, we have this little thing behind the pumpkin. So it'll just show up. Something that is important that you all might struggle with, you have to kind of drag and drop your sprites so that they're in the right layer. So if this is dragged out, then this is in the front layer. So I made this sprite to give a little bit of depth for the scoop. And so you have to drag this one and then drag the pumpkin. You drag this one and then you drag your scoop so that's in front of the back of the pumpkin, and you drag the pumpkin, but then you also have to drag the knife so that the knife ends up in front of the pumpkin as well. So I'm going to go ahead and restart this. And so, and I'll show you what it looks like if this is in front of the pumpkin also. It's invisible right now. See where the pumpkin was dragged? Now the knife is behind it, and now this is in front. So we'll go ahead and stop that and drag these in the right order. So now that we are all fixed. So the variable is also useful for making sure that you don't do things out of order. We cannot click the scoop right now, because right now the scoop is set so that once the variable is 2, then we can click on it. So we'll go ahead and click on our knife. Now that our variable is 2, we also go ahead and say to use this to scoop out the pumpkin seeds, and then we're waiting until the variable increases by 1 to make what it says go away. So we're going to snap over here, we're going to glide, and then we are going to snap back to our original position. Cool. And so afterwards we broadcasted gut. So if we look at that, because we had this sprite pop up, once gut was received, it showed. So when I receive go inside, it waits until the variable is 3, which happens after we click on our scoop, and then says, now click me to go to the kitchen. So now we have our animation. We can no longer click on these because our variable is different. We don't have the right variable. But if we look at this, when the sprite is clicked, we broadcast to kitchen. So that will affect our pumpkin, which hides, our carving knife, which will hide, our scoop, which will hide. If we look at our backdrops, when I receive to kitchen, we will switch our backdrop to the kitchen. So we'll go ahead and click on that. And this says, drag the seeds out of the pumpkin guts and lay them on the cookie sheet. The pumpkin seeds need to be in a flat layer to be cooked evenly. Okay, so let's look at our pumpkin seeds. If we look at our costumes, it's just one singular pumpkin seed, but we have quite a few here. So how do we go about doing that? Well, as you can see from our flag, when we hit this flag, we will hide. We make it so that this is draggable to the player, and we go to a random position between these parameters. So that's one seed, but when I receive to kitchen, we show the seed, and then we create clones of ourselves. So this will repeat 5 times. This is a repeat block. So it will run through this bit of code 5 times before moving forward. So as you can see, this bit of code is glowing because it's currently waiting. This one is not glowing, but it is also waiting. So after creating clones in these random parameters, we will wait, and this looks like a lot. There's a whole lot going on right here. So I'll show you how to make that real quick. This is a wait until block. So we have our wait until, which means that the code's just kind of hanging out, waiting for this right here to happen. If we look at our operators, we have an AND operator. We're going to have a whole bunch of these. We then have an a greater than operator, and then we have our X position here, which is located in motion. So we have X position. So we'll put that there, and it's greater than some number. So 5 of these are clones, and then one of these, okay, this is the actual seed that has been cloned. Something that you can do, because you're going to need to know the parameters for this area. Our area is this box around our cooking sheet. So if we take our pumpkin seed and we put it, say like there, so our X is at 124. So we need the bottom, because this is a greater than. So down here, so we would need our X to be greater than 99. I have it a little bit different since I have it closer, but I don't want it to snap to there yet. And then we will need another operator. Since this is a big long thing, we're going to put another AND. We're going to put less than, and we need our X position to be less than, so beneath 120. And then it doesn't matter which order these are in, because this one I have greater than first and then less than second, but you can also have them switched. We will need, go ahead and scoot this over, another AND operator. Go ahead and go up to motion. Now cannot forget our greater than. Now we put in our Y. And if you just type in Y, this will not work, just Y or just X, or if you type in the words Y or X, then it will not work because it doesn't understand what that is. So you have to pull out one of these blocks. And so Y position greater than, I had these backwards. X position is left to right, Y position is up and down. Y'all were probably yelling at me. I'm sorry. So our y position needs to be greater than 90 or negative 120 and less than negative 16. So I'll go ahead and fix this. Our x needs to be greater than, we'll say 22 and less than 193. And like I said, I'm making this a little bit bigger because I don't want it to just snap in and go in there. And our y position needs to be greater than, so above negative 124. And we're going to need another and here. And less than negative 14. Need our y. Negative 14. And then our very last thing, we don't need any more ands, but we do need this not mouse down. So mouse down means that your mouse is clicked in. So you have it, you can't just like look at this, you have to click your left mouse button down in order to drag it. Now if we do not include the not mouse down, then as soon as we bring this over here, it's going to just snap open. Oh, where'd it go? Well, it looks like it disappeared. Hold on. Here we go. Where'd mouse down? There we are. Okay. As soon as we bring it over to this area, if we do not have the not mouse down, then it will just snap to the tray as soon as you bring it over to this area. So we have this twice here, and that is because the original sprite that's coded here and the clones are different. So whenever we bring the sprite over here, it will broadcast next and then it will hide. Whenever we bring a clone over here, it's forever waiting until we drag and release one of these clones over here, and then that also broadcasts next, but then it deletes the clone. So if we look at these placed seeds, which are reacting, of course we have our flag so that it switches our costume and then it hides. So I have a bit of a cheat here. This isn't the clones snapping to the cookie sheet. This is actually one costume that shows with one seed, and then as you drag and drop this the seeds over to the cookie sheet, it actually switches to the next costume. So if we look at this, we have, we should be on costume 4. So as we drag one of these over, as we looked earlier, the clone will broadcast next. The seed will, after it, since it's already showing, when it receives next, it will go to the next costume. And so now we're up to the 5. It is also changing the variable by 1. So as you can see, now we're up to 8. And then once we hit 9, then it will broadcast season. So it snaps over, it makes it the 6, and then it will broadcast season. So if we look at our backdrop, when I receive season, switch the backdrop to season. So this is our like little seasoning area. We have oil, we have salt, and now we have our pumpkin seeds here. If we look at this backdrop, this is no longer an individual sprite, it's actually a part of the backdrop. So let's look at our oil. So when clicked on the flag, we have our reset where it hides and it snaps back to this position. And we have it so that when I receive season, this will show. So when the backdrop switches, this will pop up. It's the same for the salt. When clicked, it will hide, go to its specific costume, and then when I receive season, it will show. So we want to oil up our pumpkin seeds first. So currently salt is not clickable. It's waiting until our variable is the right number. So since oil is clickable now, what we're going to do is we're going to point in a direction. So earlier with the carving knife, we had a different costume for a sawing animation. For the oil, you could do this one of two ways. You can make a second oil costume and then just turn it, so you do control copy and then make another, and then you could just turn it and you could switch to this costume if you wanted to. Or we have a point in direction. So this one might be a little bit difficult. So like whenever you go to animate it, so while trying to find a direction, we can edit the oil like this. We can go to direction and we can tilt it to whatever angle we think is the best. So I had done -33. It's close enough. And whenever you find a good angle, when we go to motion, we can go, where is it? Okay, point in direction. We pull out this block and we put that in there. And so since we like -33, -34, we can change that to, not 0.34, -34, and then we'd put that in there. And then we have it so that it snaps to. So let's actually go ahead and point in direction 90. I already have it set in the code that the direction will readjust back to 90, so I'm not too worried about it putting it so that it resets on hitting this. So when we click on it, we run through the code and then we snap back, and then we also change the variable by 1. As you can see, we have a wait until my variable equals 11, and that's because we don't want the oil to just disappear until whenever after clicking on it. So if we look at the carving knife, we did it whenever the scene changed. Whenever our pumpkin seeds broadcasted to kitchen, we had it so that when I receive to kitchen, we hide. But another way to do that is to utilize the variables again, so that whenever my variable reaches 11, which it should, after we click on salt, we'll change the variable by 1, then it will hide. So as you can see, this line of code is still glowing because it's waiting. Another thing that helps with the animation, I meant to do this a little bit ago, but I forgot. We'll go to our, oopsies, -33, and now we want it to look like it's going over the pumpkin seeds, but it's kind of hard to guess and check that with just the coordinates. So when we drag our sprite around, we can see our coordinates changing down here. So once we find a spot that we like, we can go over here, and when we find go to, it will already have these coordinates in there, so we don't have to actually input them. And then to find our next area, we'll go to where we want to glide to, and then when we find glide 1 second to this area, it will also already have the coordinates. And then when we come up here, when we click on go to, again, it has the coordinates for us. And then when we go to glide, again, it has the coordinates for us. So just drag and drop your sprite and then just pull out the blocks that you need once you find the spots that you like. Don't forget though, we don't want our oil to just be floating around. We don't want it to be just on the counter spilled over. So we have it to where it snaps back to our original position, the go to, and then point in direction 90. So now that we have that, and we are waiting for the variable to be 11, let's look at our salt. This is another one I did not give you the animation for. So as you can see, you only have one salt costume, so you'll have to copy and paste it and adjust it in order to make your own costume for the shaking animation, because as you can see, it has like a little shaking animation. I'm going to go ahead and stop and get back to there, because the last bit of the game is just an animation. And if you notice, the pumpkin seeds go off in random areas. They're never the same. So now, we've oiled our seeds. Let's look at the salting now. So, this is waiting, so this cannot be clicked again. Our variable's 10, so if we click the salt, it will run through the animation. Of course, we have our green flag here so that it hides and goes to its original position, and also switches to just to double check and make sure that it's in the right costume. When we click on the salt, it will point -33 just like the oil was, but then it will broadcast shake. And so shake is our like little back and forth animation, so it looks like we are shaking the salt over it. So I did this similar to the carving knife, and where I copied it, I pasted it, but then I just barely moved it. I tilted it, and I think I moved it up a little bit. So when you switch back and forth, it's a very small amount of movement, but it's just enough to make it look like we're shaking the salt. So as it's going through, it'll snap over to this area. Oop, I clicked on it. But after we start our shaking animation, it basically does the same thing that our oil does, and I may have copied and pasted it. I believe that I did. So when you have a chunk of code like this, you can also right click and you can duplicate it, or while holding it down you can press Control C. I'll go ahead and put that back, and then if we go over to oil, we press Control V, and then sometimes it doesn't always work. I always have to do it a few times. If I'm holding it or after clicking on it. Now, there we go. If you like click on it and then or drag it around or something and you Control C it to copy it, you can go to another sprite and press Control V, and then you have that same block of code again. So that's what I did for the oil. After I made the oil animation, I just copied the location that it goes to and pasted that into the salt. So it follows the same path as the oil. The only difference is that it also has the shaking animation. During this, it will also broadcast cook and change the variable by 1. So that's why it immediately goes into the final backdrop and also goes to hide. So when I receive cook, we switch the backdrop to cook, and then we start with these last few sprites. So I'll go ahead and click on the salt, and then I'm going to go ahead and stop it real quick. So if we look at our little baking sheet down here, we have our green flag. We have when I receive cook. So if we look at our backdrop, when I receive cook, switch backdrop to cook, which is our kitchen. And then we have our animation for the cooking that starts. So our little oven mitt carrying our tray of pumpkin seeds will wait for a moment, and that's just, it's a very short wait, but it's so it doesn't just come on screen and just go. So it just makes it a little bit easier on the eyes to see. But it will glide over here into our oven. It will wait for a moment again, and then it will hide. And as it hides, it will broadcast close. And when we receive close, our oven doors will show. Or, I'm sorry, they show whenever they receive cook, but when they receive close, they will switch the costume to closed. So it will go from open to shut. And so also when after broadcasting, our countdown will begin. So if we go ahead and do that, we will go ahead and go through this animation. It disappears, our doors close, and now our countdown begins. And so the countdown works by, after showing, it'll start on 7. As you can see, we have all of our numbers. And so we have it to switch to a costume 7 because it won't end on 7. It will end on 0 here. So we have to have it so that it switches the costume to 7. It will repeat 8 times, switching the costume. So this is kind of like, what did we have before? Oh, our clone. So this repeated 5 times to make clones between these parameters. This one is just repeating that it's going to the next costume. And then once it's done switching through the costumes, it will hide, and then it will broadcast done. So that's kind of like your oven going off, like it's been enough time, it's been baking. Once we move through the countdown and we broadcast done, our oven doors will open up, because of course you have to open the doors to get your stuff out. And it opens up just by switching the costume, by the way. And it will trigger our baking sheet to switch to costume 3 and show. Costume 3 is the same as costume 2, it's just got a little bit darker seeds. And then it will wait for a moment, and then it will glide over. And then once it glides over, it will switch to costume 4, which is just the baking tray without the oven mitt. And it will broadcast endgame. And so endgame doesn't have any, it doesn't interact with any of the sprites. It just changes the text back here. So I did that by, as you can see, our cook background is this one, and it has our baking directions. But endgame is the same background, but now it just says that we have a batch of delicious pumpkin seeds to enjoy after they cool off. And it's thanks the player for playing. So if you want to change the text back here, like in your background, you can always just copy and paste your background. Use the paint tool to make a blank one, paste it, and then just change the text. Also, something that you all do not have is you all don't have the countdown. So to make you all a little bit more accustomed to not only adjusting the sprites but also to finding them, you can find the numbers. You can also make your own, but I found these in the sprite thing. But you can go up here and you can search numbers. These are the only numbers. And then you click on 7. If we go to costume, now we can see our number. And I just changed the middle color. Let's just make it red. And I deleted this background. And I did that for each of the numbers. So I go back and I found 6. It'll pop up over here. And then I changed the number. And then I deleted the background. So now we just have these bare numbers. And I did that for 7 through 0. If you pick your own color and you're like, I really like this dark red, we'll go ahead and make it that nice dark red. But you don't know how to, you don't want to go and try and change it by hand the whole time. Let's say your color is off some other number. Your color is off like that. So you don't know how to change this. You can go here and you can use this little dropper tool to kind of grab that color, and then go over here and use this fill tool to change the color, just to help out if you struggle with changing and making your colors all the same. I would also suggest, so that your costumes don't send your numbers all over the place, to make sure that the little plus sign, this little plus sign, is snapped on to this little circle in the middle as well. Because if it's not, as you can see, this is right here, and our 6 is over here, then our 6 will jump over there. So whenever you go to make your numbers, make sure that they're snapped onto the middle, unless you just want them to bounce around, which is totally fine as well. So, I believe that that is everything. The link to this game to look at it, and also the link to this one as well with all of the blank backgrounds and all of the sprites and whatnot with no code in it, will also be down in the description. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Happy Thanksgiving, and have fun coding.